We are back here on the Lynne Hayes Freeland Show. My guest today, Khari Mosley. You know me. I invite you for one thing, then we start talking about something else. But what I want to focus in on is this past week, we saw a number of states moving in the direction that concerned me. And it concerned me because I felt like voter rights were going to become an issue moving down the road. That's when I picked up the phone, texted you and said, we got to talk about this. What's going on? I mean, all of a sudden, it appears that Black and brown voters could easily become disenfranchised in the very near future just because we made a difference in the past presidential election.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in states around the country, you're seeing legislators make moves to limit access to the polls in Iowa. They're limiting the period of absentee voting. They're limiting and restricting other access, early voting, limiting the days of early voting in Iowa. You also see in Arizona. There's restrictions now around how absentee ballots can be handled in Georgia, signature matches. So you're definitely seeing an effort, a concerted effort to limit access. I believe it is in the state of Georgia where they want to give local counties the ability to not have early voting on Sunday. Mm-hmm. And we know particularly in the South where they have early voting, you see many of the souls to polls, as they call it. Where people go to church and after church, they immediately, mobilize to the polls. So I definitely am concerned about this trend. I know even here in Pennsylvania, they're looking at undoing the work of Act 77 in 2019 that allowed absentee voting without fault by mail. Mm-hmm. And it looks like there's going to be some efforts to limit that, to restrict that, to force voters to apply to vote by mail every year, as opposed to be able to universally apply for vote by mail in every election. So there's definitely steps being taken around the country to limit access to the polls.
So is it then, is that cause for concern? I mean, here's my concern, because we see this happening in spurts here and there, and, one day voting, and you can only vote on this one day. And all of a sudden, folks are going to look around, and then it's going to be too late. So what are the things that people need to be aware of? I mean, you mentioned certainly a few now, but what do people need to be doing now to make sure that we don't find ourselves in a corner right. 2 years from now, 4 years from now, and there's nothing we can do?
Absolutely. Well, actually, just this week, the federal House, the U.S. House of Representatives, advanced what they call the For the People Act, H.R. 1, which would create universal voter registration around the country, as well as have universal early voting around the country, as well as some other what folks from the progressive point of view, would call proper steps to ensure, voter protections. It would also prevent counties from purging inactive voters from the voting roll so easy. And I know there's certain legislation moving around the states right now that would allow states to purge inactive voters more easily. But yes, this was just advanced in the House. I believe it goes to the U.S. Senate, where it does have a hill to climb. It's going to need 60 votes to get past the filibuster. But H.R. 1 for the People Act is something that just moved this week, on Capitol Hill. And it's something a lot of people are watching, particularly voting rights advocates.
So is there a concern in Pennsylvania? I mean, because certainly when we look at what happened in this past presidential race, we were under attack. I mean, there was a lot of concern about the legitimacy of Pennsylvania voters and votes. Is there a concern that we could be under attack?
Absolutely. Like I said, I know there's folks in the Pennsylvania legislature as we speak that are currently, looking, for pathways to undo some of the bipartisan passed bill that created vote by mail in the state of Pennsylvania, to restrict it, to make it easier to purge people from the rolls So that's all happening in discussions in Harrisburg right now. So we definitely need to keep, our eye on, on that, as well as, what they call the judicial gerrymandering, proposal that would split the Supreme Court into a legislative like districts.
And we're kind of at this crossroads, and I think that sometimes we lose sight of the fact that local elections are the ones that really turn the state. I mean, we put all of our energy in this presidential race, but the realities are what happens locally, those are the elections that affect our lives on a daily basis. How do we get the same energy, Khari, and the same excitement into the local elections? Because those are the decisions that affect our daily lives.
That's a great question. It takes the work of grassroots organizations, local organizations, regional organizations, as well as statewide organizations, working together to bring the same enthusiasm to local elections that we have when we have statewide and federal elections. That's one of the challenges that, during U.S. Senate elections and during presidential elections, there's millions and millions of dollars being spent. There's a ton of focus, a ton of emphasis, on these races, and we don't nearly see that same level of focus, at the local level. And obviously the same level of money is not being spent because obviously local candidates don't have tens of millions of dollars to spend on television. Many of them are lucky if they have hundreds of thousands of dollars, but most of them are more in the tens of thousands of dollars. So they're not going to be making those kinds of television spends and those kind of digital spends that really, really get everybody's attention and get people knowing that there is an election coming up. But there's a lot of great groups on the ground here in Western Pennsylvania and across the state. And many of those groups are responsible for the incredible turnout from 2020.
And there's a couple of local races coming up I want to just touch on. We'll do that in just a minute when the Lynne Hayes Freeland Show continues. Don't go away.